It's 9 hours.
All right, hand it over to Brian.
There it is. Thanks, everyone. While I get my permissions sorted, be ye wary who update your Macs right before you do a thing. Let me share my desktop. Why don't I start with a fun fact, and I'll get to that. A lot of people ask when I sit in here, is that a tanuki back there? And fun fact, to be honest, I don't really know. I think it's just a fox, but it is cool. But yeah, kind of wish it was a tanuki. All right. We're actually covering 2 quarters in this quarterly release update. That's, of course, 6 major releases, 12.3 through 12.8. So we'll get right to it. I also, you may notice me shuffling a little bit, actually have some notes because covering that much territory in Gitlab India is a little crazy for 20 minutes. We're still going to do it because that's how we are. The good side of crazy. Gitlab has released a new version of our software factory in a box on the 22nd of every month for more than 100 consecutive months. Now, I've been in software for more than 20 years. I do not know of another product like ours shipping with that level of reliability. And as we all know, reliability means everything in business, right? So you can mention this wherever it's useful. I know you can because Sid did so at GitLab Commit in San Francisco. But let's talk product, and not in terms of all the technical details as much as let's talk product in terms of value, right? And yes, our value drivers also are differentiators. For example, 12.2 was the last time we had a release update like this with a headlining feature there, directed acyclic graphs. Checking my notes on that one. Be the first kid on your block to completely understand directed acyclic graphs. Seriously though, you should read at least the tops of each of these release blog posts. They're written by folks in product marketing, so they have that value-centered messaging that you need. And then read this section below that. It's literally called key features. I'm doing this especially for anyone who's very new. That's like the top 5 features, which in any recent release is less than 10% of the significant features. So you're just going to get a 5 or 10 minute read, maybe a little more if you have to Google something like DAGs. But with that, also a demo video, and then all the rest of the release post. You know, I hereby absolve you of the sin of not reading all of it. Scan it, you know, scan it for that stuff your customers have been asking for. Scan it for just whatever's new in premium, whatever filter is useful to you. But do actually read the top section. It's quick, it's useful, and it'll help you learn a little bit about stuff like DAGs along the way. Now, I took all those key features, that's 5 per each of the 6 releases, so 30 key features, and put them on this little table per value driver, per differentiator. Even here, the words are a little small, so I've got a link actually to my work there. But I'll also tease out a couple of insights in terms of these visualizations. I'm not especially surprised by this one in particular, but I am reassured by it. Back in 12.0, we started flying that flag of DevSecOps, said, hey, we've done enough, we're going to fly that flag. Also, we know we need to do a lot more. And here you can see in the past 6 months, according to key features, that's been where a lot of them have fallen when you map them to our differentiators. And of course, it just makes sense that we've also really reasserted our advantages in terms of our most unique differentiators, that single app for the entire DevOps lifecycle and leading SCM and CI in one application. You may have noticed earlier, I've looked at the key features also according to product tier. And I bring this up partly because I've been hearing from really the 2 different camps, occasionally things like, it seems like we do a lot more for core than we do for premium or ultimate, Or of course, the opposite from other people. It seems like you do a lot more for paid users than you do for free users. And that's fine. A little bit of that tension is actually generative. People advocate for what they want. Great. But actually, when you look at key features over the past 6 months, you can all do the math on these data. It's a wash. It's about 50-50. And both of those perspectives are kind of wrong, even if in one version or another, they're actually kind of right. If you do zoom out, there's something like a 60-40 split favoring free over paid over all these 6 months for all of the hundreds of significant features. But again, it's not zero sum in both directions, right? Something that makes you faster and was there for core makes everyone faster, to state the obvious. And as we all saw from Sid at SCO, this was, I really liked it, this double flywheel theoretical model of how it all works, that these two investments benefit each other so well. If something like this slide, incidentally, doesn't make immediate sense to you, and I'm going a little fast just to stay on time, down in the speaker notes for all of these slides is often more explanation and links to references. So please grab a copy and dig in as you like. Now, I pulled this quote in yellow here from the interview published in Business Insider just this past weekend with Sid. And I also looked at each of these versions over the last 6 months and what we were doing for which tier. And as you can see, yes, sometimes we actually did do a little bit more for paid than for free users or vice versa. But I think the headline is rapid innovation here. I think the headline is 372 significant features that we actually mentioned in a release blog post over those 6 months. And yes, the increasing velocity over time. I really think that's the big headline. Now, I barely showed this slide earlier because the words were pretty small. It's a lot in slide form. It's also a lot for the part of this now where I want to zoom in and actually talk about some of these features. So I filtered again, looking at just the headline features, what actually gets into the headline. That makes a baker's dozen over half a year. And so let's actually zoom in and talk about those. A handful of those headline features, including the web application firewall here, or WAF, as the cool kids say, are available to the core product here. But again, it's not like that only makes core more secure, of course, provides value for everyone. This was the first iteration for both WAF and product analytics. That's the kind of good information you'll get from that release blog post. You'll want to factor that in naturally. There'll be lots of circumstances where, because something is the first iteration, it's, yeah, time for us to start marketing it for other reasons, like we want to get early adopters and their feedback, but maybe it's not time for everyone to sell against that feature yet. And then there'll be other cases where it is exactly time for you to start working it into your conversations or to connect it with somebody you know is looking for it. MR dependencies in 12.4, those were released for premium. This feature is helpful, especially if you have multiple developers working toward a larger goal. And then those changes need to be merged in a certain sequence so that they ultimately work as intended. The audit events API, pardon me there, that helps address the importance of governance and visibility. It also streamlines processes because of that automation. It's also for premium. And of course, for people truly new, that also means ultimate. EKS cluster creation, you know, oftentimes in the headlines, we're abbreviating the proper title of a feature. And so you'll hear some discrepancy in what I actually say, or see some discrepancy inside of the post versus what's in the headline. Just a general FYI there, but easily creating and deploying to an Amazon EKS cluster is in core. That maps both to our belief in multi-cloud and to our optimization for Kubernetes in terms of differentiators. It's similar to what we had done for Google's GKE, automates a lot, does in that regard make people more efficient. Similar things could be said for Environments Dashboard for DevOps teams, really. It's for premium, very much makes you more efficient. With that, you can manage the status and the health of environments where your code is deployed across multiple projects, but all in one place. In 12.6, security scorecards go by at least several names, kind of depending how you're looking at it. They're also called security grades. You actually get vulnerabilities graded like A, B, C, D, F, so you know roughly how severe they are and how many of which level of severity you have. Sometimes they're referred to in docs as project security status panel because that's where in the UI they show up. So that makes it easier to understand just where your projects have vulnerabilities, at what level of severity. Released evidence is one of those things that thank you automation really liberates people from those manual processes, especially in terms of compliance for documenting and demonstrating compliance. That evidence file is created. It links automatically to milestones and issues, and then that ultimately streamlines the future audits. 12.7, parent-child pipelines. It's one of those features that people, many people were asking for over many moons. Both of these headline features here were very much in demand and are in core. Parent-child pipelines functionally help when pipelines get very large and very complex. That's harder for both the machines and the people. They take longer to run, they're harder to understand. Separating those out and simplifying ultimately makes things faster. You can run some things concurrently then, and makes things in many ways more efficient as well. Even that though, as we're breezing through these things, just to demonstrate why you do have to click through and read some more yourself, it doesn't tell the whole story. Like we saw at SCO with parent-child pipelines, that's part of a larger strategy to better support large repos. It'll unlock opportunities in areas like gaming, where each of these are necessary. There's a great story in the speaker notes for this slide and some great proof points behind that. Please do dig in if you breezed past that at SCO and kind of missed some of that detail there. And then just to go back, Windows shared runners, great for people building Windows applications who previously needed to set up their own runners to kind of state the obvious, but now they can take advantage of shared runners on Gitlab.com. Finally, 12.8, released just this past weekend. We squeezed 3 features into the headline here with super abbreviation. Log Explorer is about the fact that otherwise logs are in multiple places, and we want to aggregate those so that we can have an index over them, which more immediately means you can search. And that means when you're in the heat of an incident management type of moment, your logs are actually useful to you. They were sort of barely useful before they were aggregated. This is overall just an awesome step forward, adds a lot of value to Ultimate, is particularly worth a shout here. NuGet is a super abbreviation that's shorthand for built-in, the built-in to GitLab NuGet or .NET repository. That's for C# and .NET developers. Ultimately allows them to use fewer tools and to cash in on that most unique differentiator of ours, because they get all of their code, their CI/CD pipelines, and the resulting packages all in the same application. Compliance here is shorthand for the compliance dashboard, out in its first iteration with 12.8, but already useful in its way. It's part of a larger build out of compliance management, and a lot more is planned, as explained in that release post. And then finally, because we are covering again so much ground, I wanted to zoom back out. Yes, we've got the key features organized by value driver, but you can also organize them functionally. And this is a shout to Kenny in the go-to-market update a couple weeks ago. Thanks, Kenny, for this. There are 3 buckets really where a lot of these updates fall: compliance, visibility or analytics, and then ecosystem improvements. And you can map a lot of the updates you see here to those 3 functional buckets. That sort of puts a bow on functionally what we've updated in the last half a year. Compliance, just to say a few of these things out loud, you can look at the start of the compliance dashboard, of course, the audit API, code owner approvals, automated release evidence file, access control for pages, that's on .com. For analytics or visibility, mapping to that, productivity analytics, those being really for engineering managers, security scorecard for security teams, and the environments dashboard for DevOps teams, code review analytics, of course. And I could go on, but you get the idea. Ecosystem improvements, what I'm categorizing there would be things like that easy Kubernetes cluster deploy for Amazon EKS, integration with SourceGraph, that's for CodeNav, and with WhiteSource, that's for open source security scanning. Improved integration, worth a shout, for Jaeger, that's for visualizing stack traces, with Sentry for error tracking. And then, of course, the registries for Conan or C++ packages, and that NuGet or .NET repository. Now, even that doesn't mention all the stuff on this page, which again is just the top 10% of all the significant features, comprised by something like 10,000 merge requests in all this time. So yeah, rapid innovation. And yeah, I sort of wish I could channel or type in disaster for this kind of stuff so we could poetically cover all of these features in such a short time. Maybe next time, disaster, we can rhyme this in 3 months and actually do it for 3 months instead of 6. We are also doing this to talk a little bit about the future. As is obvious by this slide, we all know the future is going to be awesome. I'll do this in about, I don't know, 4 minutes so we can still get a couple questions in. The big price jump to Ultimate, I think it's already worth it, but also a huge amount of value is planned for Ultimate in the fairly near future. I stole this from Salmia and Cindy at SCO. Thank you very much for that. Also in the notes on this slide, by the way, I've got a link to a session that Cindy recorded after SCO so that all of you could also take part in that. It was really for TAMs and the more technical side of the sales crowd. But I think it's a value for all of you in helping to position GitLab Secure for Ultimate. So do watch that video linked to from the speaker notes on this slide. And then as far as what's coming here, worth a shout, value stream management. A lot of customers still struggling with their whole value chain and understanding that from planning through to delivery of that value. And we can provide that insight because our most unique differentiator, of course, being that complete DevOps platform. Similarly for compliance, incidentally, because your whole DevOps process fits into GitLab, that's why we're uniquely positioned to help ensure that compliance. So from a lot of different directions, we end up back on that really core plank in our bridge to the customer. There are also just a ton of security features coming this year that map to Ultimate. Now, in the very near future, of course, we'll all meet again in Prague. Spare a thought as you're landing for the team members at GitLab who will also, on that day, March 22nd, be landing 12.9. If you are new enough not to know this, then here's your clue. We do a product release kickoff that is live streamed to the world actually a few days for each release, a few days before the previous release is actually released. So on the 18th of February, we did the 12.9 kickoff call. That video is very much worth your time. It's not very long, high level, really juicy stuff about what's coming up in the next version. And it points to the handbook page, which I also give you a link to here. For 12.10, and partly I raise it just so we all understand the versioning scheme here. Yes, we're going 12.9, then 12.10, then 13.0. No, it hasn't always been that way, and yes, it could change again, but that's the plan right now. In this case, you want to go to the direction pages. They're recently improved a great deal. They're organized by section. And again, a shout out to Kenny for this. It's not just what we're going to do and why and when and for which product tier, by the way, is also there. It's also what we're not going to do and why. Really useful to all of us in our conversations, and some new, very clear investment themes that help to frame all of this. So if you haven't hit those direction pages in a while, hit them sometime soon, super useful. And then of course 13.0 coming May 22nd to a screen near you. I want to wrap right close to 20 minutes for my personal soliloquy portion here. So I won't really read all of these product investment themes that we heard about from SCO. What I will say is that I found it extremely useful a week or two after to actually go back to the slides from just these 6 rock stars who gave us an earth-shattering 20 minutes that I couldn't possibly retell in 1 minute here. What I can do is dig up links to all of their slides and give you those links. So here they are. From the comfort of your laptop where you can Google anything you need to. Please go back and look at this again. It's the best view you're going to have, really juicy stuff at what's coming up in fiscal 21. And then finally, just a meta word about the way this session was organized. We do intend to do these updates quarterly, and you should expect one a few months from now. This one, we tried to do it more using our value drivers and differentiators that weren't even really on board with us the last time we did this. We're also introducing in product marketing and strategic marketing what's been called a pivot to the customer use case. I would say it's not so much a pivot only because we're not pivoting away from anything we're already using in our strategy. This is an additional lens that will help bring into focus really those customer problems and initiatives that have attracted budget inside of their organization and are ultimately the reasons that they will choose GitLab. So the use cases put things in their perspective, they help us help them and to really be that advisor to our customers. I'm really looking forward to it. We're actually already working on several. Can't do it all at once. There's reorganization plus a little bit of material to create in these cases. Even this map may actually be a little out of date now that I look at it post-SCO, but so you have an idea, we're mapping our priorities in strategic marketing to all those that also are in effect throughout marketing and sales and product. All that said, oof. Thanks for letting me actually use notes, which I hate to do, but I wanted to make sure we did it in 20. So hit me with some questions or some feedback, and we'll follow up either here or just as soon as we can.
All right, Brian, looks like we have our first question from Larry B. Larry, you want to ask him?
Yeah, certainly. I appreciate the sort of the composition of where the development is coming from and which releases it's actually being targeted toward. What I wanted to understand was to what extent are the contributions in core coming from the open source and global contributors versus what we're doing internally, just to understand what that looks like and whether or not we're spending a whole heck of a lot of time on core internally versus the paid releases. That's sort of my
I hear you, Larry. You know what? Those details are written into the release blog posts. So when you get down there in the blog post, and it's a little lower down, generally speaking, not always, but the community contributions just tend to be that way. And we'll say, thanks to so-and-so who contributed this. In aggregate, I don't have a immediate thought on how to pull that as data to give you that kind of aggregate view like I tried to in the slides. But I think that's worth doing. It's something I'm going to look into and get back to you on. And then I'll type it into the notes on this deck just for posterity. I will say that in the actual text of the blog posts, we say that part out loud. So somebody could manually count all that. I'm curious, like you are, where we can say those efforts are. And then, yeah, sometimes a contribution comes in. And by the way, that also creates work for us to really make it completely work or more integrated. It's not always just as simple as accepting a contribution necessarily.
Okay, well, any information would be helpful. Just sort of curious. Thank you.
I have the next one. I'll jump in. Brian, thanks for the overview. I appreciate it. My question was, with the kind of pivot to more of a use case focus that you highlighted at the end, will that impact the way that your team is writing the release posts? So I know right now they focus heavily on kind of features. And so will there be, at least for the top kind of features released in a given release, will they focus more on the use cases as well?
I hope so, and I'm quite sure it will, insofar as those release blog posts are, to a certain degree, ghost written by people on the product marketing team, on John Jeremiah's team. So we'll all definitely do that, and that'll go a long way. A lot of times, you know, it's like saying, are we using our differentiators to affect the way we write those? Absolutely. They're not always spelled out like that. It's in between the lines. But it's just critical to put these things in the perspectives that matter the most to our customers and prospects. And so, of course, in the part of the release blog post, that upper part, and then definitely the featured blocks for the key features, the parts that are more messaged, absolutely it will be there. And to a significant degree, PMMs, product marketing managers, have been helping to message feature blocks throughout a lot more of the release blog post. To the extent that continues, you should expect, I think the use cases will impact really everything there.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
Hey, I'll go. This is DT, Solution Architects, coming to you from a sunny Santa Cruz, California. Thank you very, very much for doing this holistic overview of all the releases. I've been here for almost 3 years, and it's refreshing to see that an overview, all the details. You did a really, really good job. It's really hard. Sometimes it's hard to, here in the field, we get stuck in like the customer situations. But to get a good overview glance of what like Gitlab is providing, it's refreshing. So thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. The one biggest thing I hope you take away is to carve out a couple hours, if you need that much from scratch, to actually read the tops of all those blog posts and to watch the couple of videos I said everybody on this call should probably watch. It'll probably take a couple hours if you haven't done any of those things. And of course, less if you've done some of it. You'll get a lot more out of that than you'll get out of these 20 minutes, including just by doing some of that homework yourself. Naturally, you'll connect it to the stories that you tell. You'll find cards that you can play. You'll find answers to those objections you've been facing. I can't do that in a real tailored way to everyone on the call, but you can certainly do that yourself with the resources that I linked to here.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. Let's end it on a positive note. Have a good day.
I was waiting for the big but. Okay, thanks everyone.
Cheers.